We've got some big, exciting news. At least it's big and is exciting for us. We are about to launch the Hard But Worth It podcast, and we want to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes insight into why we're doing this and what it's all about. So, in some way, welcome to the Hard But Worth It podcast. It's a podcast about leadership, it's a podcast about the stories of leadership. And we're going to be bringing on guests, and they're going to tell you their stories. Most of these guests are going to be past and present clients of Icon, and we get to sit with them week after week and hear these stories unfold. And I just can't stand keeping them from you because they're amazing, and I get to hear them all the time, and we want to share them with you. For this podcast, Mitch is going to be my co-host. So, Mitch, welcome to the Hard But Worth It podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Mitch is a seasoned podcast host. He's been running a podcast called The Whole Enchilada, and I want to give him a chance to tell you a little bit about that. What was The Whole Enchilada about?
Yeah, The Whole Enchilada podcast is a podcast about life, leadership, and of course, really good Mexican food. Hence the name.
Yep.
And it's just keyed off of a similar spirit as Hard But Worth It. This idea of the whole enchilada, meaning we're not going to settle for other things, but the one thing that we think is the best outcome, the dream, the whole enchilada. We're going to go for it, whatever it costs, whatever it takes. And as we've been doing that the last 3 seasons, we felt a time to kind of put it a bit on pause, just to let it kind of bake a little bit. And then you and I met. And we realized that we had a lot in common and that maybe these 2 podcast ideas could really merge and we can synergize together and build off that chemistry. So here we are, the Hard But Worth It podcast. And we're trying to bring in the Whole Enchilada crew as well. So if you're following us in from the Whole Enchilada podcast, because we did do a final episode there, asking all of our listeners to come on over. We want to welcome you, and we're looking for a new adventure together. It's going to be a fun time.
And if you want to experience the back catalog of The Whole Enchilada, you can do that at thewholeenchiladapodcast.com.
Correct. Or all the platforms that
that
you get your podcast on.
3 seasons of work there, a lot of great leaders, a lot of great conversations, and we really are pulling that whole energy into this podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, there's a bonus episode coming out, or it might even be out already, where you get to interview me.
Yeah, exactly. And it just felt like the right way. So knowing that we are ending kind of sad, the Whole Enchilada podcast, but with a special announcement of I'm not going anywhere, but we're moving over and we're partnering together. It just seemed really fitting to bring you on as a guest. Let's talk about it there. And then we called in and tried to get our crowd to woo over. We've had about 600 listeners listening in somewhere, sometime. Not all of those were my mom. So,
and there's a crew in Idaho, is it?
Yeah, Iowa. Yeah, we have a pretty good listenership. About 30% of our listenership is in Iowa. So thank you out there.
If you're coming in from Iowa, leave a comment and let us know who you are. And if you're throwing listen parties or what's going on in Iowa, we'd like to meet you.
So then, Kirk, talk to me about why the name Hard But Worth It.
One of the central ideas that I discovered in listening to clients for years now is that they're not looking for an easy button.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work out there in the success literature. There's a lot of clickbaity stuff. It really is, in my estimation, selling an easy button. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't that be great if there was? And what we're doing is working with people who they've recognized that just doesn't get you where you want to go. There's no magic wand. There's no easy button. There is a worth it button. And we want to explore those stories with people who have figured out that there's a lot about building a business, building an organization, being a great leader that is just flat out hard.
Yeah.
In Lynn Cicconi's book, The Motive, he labels it as the worst job in the organization. A lot of people think it's the best job. You get to be in charge, you get the corner office, you get all the perks and all this stuff. And it's like, nah, there's a very real way in which it's the worst job.
Yeah.
And the great leaders get that. They understand that this journey is about hard, but worth it.
Yeah.
And so really, we say there's no easy button in leadership. We're not ever going to try to present one. But there is a difference between hard but not worth it.
Yeah.
That's just punishment.
Hard but not worth it.
Hard but not worth it. That's a thing in the world.
That's like digging a hole to prove a point.
Exactly.
Right? It's like,
first rule of holes, stop digging.
Yeah, stop digging a hole. Hire a tractor.
Hard but not worth it is just punishment. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that end up in those kinds of environments, and we really do want to lift them
Yeah,
out of it.
exactly.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Hard but worth it is the difference between punishment and sacrifice.
Mhm.
And sacrifice is when you're doing things that are hard, but they're coming from something intrinsic. It's coming from inside
Right.
of you as a prime motivator.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think with that too is if you're a emerging leader or you're a seasoned leader, there is this sense that we at some point in our lives, we sign on to this idea that we're going to be lifelong learners. We're going to continue to grow. So, for example, what was hard yesterday or in a previous season might seem easy for me today,
Yeah.
only because I did the work to get through it. So now, how do we continue to do that work, right? Where we're not just picking hard for hard, but hard is defined by the sense of we're tying it to the deepest thing in us, knowing that we're going to be willing to pay any price, any sacrifice, because it's going to be worth it.
I spent a lot of time fishing, and I have over the course of my life done a lot of this. And one of the things I've learned is that people think fishing is about catching. They think it's about the actual moment when you catch fish. And there's a way in which that's true.
Sure.
But if that's true, then why do we do so much casting?
Yeah.
And because fishing isn't about catching, it's about casting. It's about this process of the pursuit,
Yeah.
of looking for that next hole, that next opportunity, that next style of fishing. And what I've learned about fishing over time is every time I figure out how to catch as many fish as I want, I make it more difficult.
Yeah.
I switch styles, I switch rivers, I switch environments, and I
Yeah.
get back to this idea of just the pursuit again.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the idea of mastery, which is what I think you were just describing. The masters are people who, you watch them and they do this thing
Yeah.
and it's just beautiful. And we all go, they make it look so easy. And there's that easy word,
Yeah.
but there's nothing about what they're doing that's easy.
Right.
They just make it look easy.
Yeah.
And then we step out into that environment. We
Yep.
try to do it ourselves and you find, oh, it's hard.
Yep.
What the
Yeah.
master has figured out is that it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, and they've done the work, the simplicity on the far side of complexity. There's a journey of getting there that people pay millions and millions of dollars for. It's just who is the person who is willing to live those stories, to write that book that now everyone's willing to buy or to pay for that technology. You're making me think of like children and just again, this idea of growing and how, in some seasons when you're younger, something might seem really hard that now that you're 10 or 15 years down the road, that looks really easy. And we kind of go through those moments like, why was that so big to me? Then it seems so small now, but we're remembering we've grown, we've moved forward. It's kind of like, I think of that Easter Sunday where all the cousins show up and it's the big Easter egg hunt out in the yard. And you've got the littles that are 2 years old and they can barely hold their basket.
Yeah.
And then you've got the 16 and 17-year-olds who are just ready because they know grandma's got the eggs with like $20 bills
Yeah.
and $100 bills in them. And so the dads go out, right? And what we do with those $100 bill eggs or the $20 bill eggs is we hide those up in the trees. We hide those under things. We hide those in places that aren't obvious. They're harder to find. Why? Because there's more value in those eggs. And then the little jelly bean eggs and things. For the littles, we're putting eggs all over the place. In fact, we let the littles go first
Find all
when we
that.
say why, because we know the 18-year-olds are going to pummel those kids, step on them and grab everything in their sight. So we give them a 2 or 3 minute head start. And the littles, they can't even barely pick up the eggs in front of them. They're stepping over them. But at some point, all the obvious eggs go away.
Yeah.
And what we know is, as we've grown, the olders know that the older kids know that there are bigger, more valuable eggs, but they're gonna have to look in harder places. You're gonna have to climb a tree. You might have to crawl underneath the house. You have to look deeper and wider. But as a result, the payoff is greater because you're willing to go for it.
So we want to capture those stories.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of them, and I don't think that you
Yeah.
can get enough of this.
Yeah.
We need a constant reminder that there are things worth engaging,
Yeah.
that there's a new challenge, that we should never give up. But what we should never give up is that constant
Yeah.
learning and growing into the unknown and becoming masters of new things.
Yeah. I agree.
And every single time, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
question is, will it be worth it?
Right.
The Hard But Worth It podcast is going to get released on all the regular platforms, and you can also watch it on video here on YouTube. It'll be its own playlist. We invite you to come on this journey with us because we're going to have amazing stories for you of amazing leaders who are doing things that are hard but worth it.